Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Hanson-Connell. I am the program director with St. Paul Urban Tennis, and I'm just going to give a quick presentation on our COVID safety procedures for this summer. So please stay tuned, and if you have any questions at the end of this presentation, make sure to let us know. You can email admin@urbantennis.org, or you can give us a call at 651-222-2879. All right, I hope you find the information you need to make an informed decision for this summer. So here we go. I'm going to present my screen real quick, and all right, I believe we are in it. So this is St. Paul Urban Tennis's 2020 Summer Safety Plan. Just to give you an outline of what you'll find in this presentation is first a bit of context, help you understand what our decision making, some of the factors we considered in our decision making. I'll go over some of the phases that we are proposing for our gradual reopening. I'm going to do some program outlining, show you what those look like, and then give you a sense of what our daily safety practices and procedures will look like. So here we go. So first, some context. So some COVID quick facts. I put facts in quotation marks not to question the legitimacy of facts in this moment, but just to say that our facts are constantly evolving. So the things that we're pretty sure of is that, well, we're not 100% sure of anything. Our health leaders are doing an incredible job, and I don't mean to delegitimize the work that they're doing. What I mean to say is that as hard as they're working, this is a new virus. They don't know everything about it yet, and so they're learning new things every day. And our understanding of what coronavirus is constantly evolving. So that makes it really hard to know what the facts are, but it is best to trust our health leaders as much as possible. One other thing that I think we really need to repeat, because when COVID was coming out initially, we worried so much about surface-to-surface transmission, but as research and as our understanding of it has grown, we really do know for the most part that it is a respiratory disease. So the main form of transmission is from airborne particles that are breathed between one person to another. One of the things that has come out is that the surface-to-surface transmission is rare, but again, we shouldn't write anything off at this point. But that'll come up later in our kind of decision making, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So some context specific to St. Paul Urban Tennis. One thing is that COVID has not impacted our St. Paul communities equally. St. Paul, as great as our city is, does struggle, like most metropolitan cities in the United States, with inequality. There's a lot of low-income communities and communities of color that have worse outcomes than more affluent or predominantly white communities. This is largely correlated with the access to healthcare. Healthcare is a lot harder to access in communities that are low-income, communities of color, largely immigrant communities, things like that. We also know that those communities tend to be disproportionately impacted by comorbidities. And a comorbidity is essentially things like asthma or diabetes. You can think of it as kind of like pre-existing conditions that might make COVID potentially more harmful. And then another thing is that elderly citizens have worse outcomes than younger citizens. And where that plays into our decision making is that a lot of our participants belong to multi-generational homes. So when we think of a multi-generational home, it's a kid plus parents plus grandparents, most often. And that means that the risk of a SPUT kid going to a lesson and then potentially transmitting it or catching it and then transmitting it to an elderly person who is at greater risk of a bad outcome is greater. And it's just something that we need to be aware of when we are making decisions about our programming. So with everything in life, nothing is truly risk-free, but with COVID, there are some things that we can do to significantly reduce the risk. And those things include being outdoors, lots of airflow outdoors. It's very hard for, no, I shouldn't say hard, but the risk of transmission outdoors is a lot lower than it is indoors in close proximity. Distance is another way. The farther you are away from somebody, the harder time those little COVID air particles have making it from one person to another. Limiting shared surfaces, checking your symptoms frequently, just kind of keeping an awareness. Do I have a fever? Have I experienced a dry cough? Loss of smell, headaches, muscle soreness, things like that, different symptoms that I'll go over again later in this presentation. But the more our people stay aware of those symptoms and kind of monitoring themselves, the greater chance we have of catching COVID early in someone and being able to kind of, guide them out of programming so that they don't, accidentally transmit to somebody else. And then the final one, this has been an effective strategy in a lot of areas and countries, is network capping and tracing. And basically what this means is that if you're not going to do, a full-on quarantine where you never leave your house, then the next best thing is to limit the number of people that you have contact with. If you only ever see 4 people and those 4 people only ever see each other, then if one of you somehow accidentally contracts COVID, then the furthest it's really going to get is to those 4 people. As opposed to if each of you hangs out with 4 other people and each of those people hangs out with 4 other people, well, you can kind of start to see where that tree of exposure fans out greatly. And there's a much greater risk of exponential transmission. And then the other thing is tracing. So just keeping track of who you've been in contact with so that if you do contract COVID, that you can reach out and you can help them, monitor their practices and things like that so that they don't spread it further than is safe. And then finally, the big question, is tennis safe? Well, that depends on how you do it. First, one of the biggest ways to play tennis safely is to play it outdoors, which St. Paul Urban Tennis, we do all of our summer programming outdoors. So that is nice for us. That said, I do know that we have a lot of great partners across the city. Fredwell's Tennis and Education, Inner City Tennis. Those are indoor facilities that follow great safety protocols. So if you do consider playing tennis indoors, just make sure to check that they are following rigorous safety protocols. Make sure to maintain spacing. A court is 78 feet long. Generally, it's recommended that if you are going to be around people, you maintain a minimum of 6 feet. So one of the things that I'll talk about more is that for the duration of our programs, participants will never be closer than 10 feet from one another. Of course, accidents will likely happen. A kid will forget and maybe run. But our coaches will be very, very diligent in maintaining that 10 feet of separation. Thankfully, a court is a very big space, and we should not have a problem in doing that. We're going to be limiting shared surfaces. That's one of the best ways to keep tennis safe. So as much as you can, don't share rackets, try not to share benches, things like that. And then limit the network of partners. Again, this connects to that kind of network capping. So for the duration of our programs this summer, kids will only ever be on court with in groups of 4. So they shouldn't be able to spread it to potentially 20 other kids in their tennis class. It really should only go as far as those 4 kids. And again, I really hope that you all believe that we're taking a lot of measures to make sure that transmission never even has the opportunity to occur within our programs. But this is kind of our last, worst case scenario, right? Making sure that it doesn't become, a bad scenario, doesn't go to a terrible scenario. So just to overview our phases, we have 3 phases. We're currently in phase 1, and phase 1 will kind of happen now until the end of June. But some of the programs that we have put in place for phase 1 will continue on forever. Phase 1 is being defined by virtual and remote programming. We are having no in-person contact, no coach to student contact. And the key program that I'll talk about with this is our Tennis Where You Are program. It's a fully virtual program Google Classroom, YouTube, and activity packets. It's really fun. You should check it out. I'll say more on the next slide. Phase 2 is individual and small group lessons. That is going to open up on June 29th. We're going to cap the student coach to student ratio at 1:4. So what that means is there will always be one coach for every 4 students. Keeping this ratio low really helps us make sure that safety is a priority and that we can monitor and maintain it effectively. There will never be more than 4 participants on court at a time. This table is a little bit old. We had planned for 8 sites, but that has changed. I think we're going to be doing 5 or 6 sites. You'll have to double check on our registration page for that information. It is stpaulurbantennis.org/summer 2020. And then phase 3, we're hoping we can get there. This will be defined by small group camps. Again, we'll keep that coach to student ratio at 1:4. But in this scenario, it really kind of depends on what the end of July brings. But potentially, if things feel comfortable, if we go through a successful phase 2, then we would maybe open it up to groups of 8. St. Paul Parks and Rec is actually kind of piloting this right now. They have these small group camps where it's 27 kids at a site, but they're in groups of 9, and those groups of 9 don't mix with one another. So we'll be kind of monitoring to see how that works and if they are able to maintain safety. And then we'll apply what they learned through that to some camps potentially starting in late July or August. So phase 1, again, I say, it goes through June 29th, but this Tennis Where You Are program is really awesome, and it will be on the internet forever. So please take advantage of it. It is a great program, and our coaches worked really, really hard to put together something that's really, really cool. Tennis Where You Are can take place anywhere, and we mean pretty much anywhere. It can happen anytime if you want to do it in the morning, in the afternoons, any time you want to, and it can happen at any pace. We have it mapped out as a 6-week program with 1 lesson per day. But if you wanted to, you could do it over the course of 3 weeks and just do 2 lessons a day. You could take a longer approach and do it over the course of 10 weeks. It's really whatever works for you and your child. And then the last thing, we are building out partnerships with community organizations, trying to support them however we can with equipment and training. And this is my convenient little reminder to have you all go to YouTube and search for St. Paul Urban Tennis. We have an official YouTube channel now, and you should subscribe and help us get to the point where we can make our own custom URL and share our mission even further. So please check us out on YouTube. Phase 2 is set to start on Monday, June 29th, and it will go through July 27th. That's about 4 weeks. It is small group lessons. These lessons will take place in 2 different 2-week sessions. It's a little bit confusing. So, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. The sites that we have confirmed are Central, Como, Edgecombe, Harding, and Highland. With the possibility of opening up an additional site or 2, but we don't want to announce those quite yet because we're still working to get those confirmed with the city. Again, this will be confined to 4 students per court, and we'll have a court of separation between. The only place that this might happen is if we do open up an additional site and it only has 2 courts. That might be the only scenario where we don't have that court of separation, but we will make sure that families are aware of that change if it comes up. And then again, continuing to build our partnerships with community organizations. The coaches that partner with, say, St. Paul Parks and Rec or SPPS Discovery Club, they will only be a part of those programs. So we're going to try and limit, the opportunities for coaches to go to one site and then go to another and go to another. And we will make sure that anytime coaches, are in a shared space for training scenarios, they will be wearing masks. We will be maintaining physical distancing and things like that. But we just want you to know that that is something that we are doing, and that's kind of how our thinking goes to make sure that we don't kind of open up opportunities for transmission between different sites. The phase 2 schedule looks like this. We have session 1 going from June 29th to July 9th. Same schedule daily as our traditional summer, where you've got the 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. group is ages 5 to 8. 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. is ages 9 to 10, and 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. is conveniently kids of the same age, ages 11 and 12. One thing I want to point out, because it's been a common question, is that ages are just recommendations. Really, it's a starting point for you as the parent to consider, will my child be, happy, have a good time, be appropriately challenged in this group? Oftentimes, we have 10-year-olds that will bump up into an 11 and 12-year-old group. Oftentimes, there's 13-year-olds that have a friend, who's 11 or 12 that they want to play among that group. So if you ever have a question or want to explore maybe signing up for a time that's outside of your player's age level, just give us a call or send us an email. And then also starting a week after is our junior team tennis programming. Please note that it is a different start. That's to make sure that we have the appropriate safety protocols in place for our lessons, get that all figured out, get that good to go, and then we'll start JTT the week after. And again, the reason we're doing these 2-week sessions, kind of chunking it up this way, is it really gives us more flexibility. One, to kind of learn from, hey, what worked in session 1? How can we apply it to session 2? What were our gaps in understanding the first round? How can we improve them for session 2? And then also, again, in that worst case scenario where we have to close down a session, it's easier to close down a 2-week session than it is to close down a 4-week session. So that's a little bit of our thinking there, in case you are curious. And then finally, phase 3, I'll go over this quickly because this is evolving. We haven't finished mapping it out, and a lot of it depends on how things go in the coming weeks. But again, might start July 27th. We're looking at a 1-to-4 coach to student ratio. Maximum camp size might be upwards of 24 students. Again, we will only do this if we have a high degree of confidence in our ability to keep kids safe. And even in that situation, we would max it out at 8 per group, similar to how the City of St. Paul Parks and Rec Department is maxing out their groups at 9. We'll just kind of keep track. And most likely these will be half-day camps running from 9 a.m. to noon, Monday through Thursday. So we're at our safety procedures. So prior to a program, these are some things that we ask all families to complete before they arrive on the first day. First, we want you to watch this presentation. Second, please review the daily procedures and recommendations with your student. Those are upcoming in the upcoming slides. Read and endorse the SPUT participation waiver that will be coming out shortly if you've registered. And then number 4, we're going to have no way of knowing if you're doing this, but we really, really want you to commit to this as best as possible. Please commit to limiting your exposure to individuals outside your home as much as possible. We know that every family is different, but again, with the context that we shared earlier, where this is not affecting everybody equally, that not everybody has access to the resources that some of us might have, we really want you to be to some degree of responsibility and commitment to the other SPUT participants, that if you do participate in programming, as much as possible, please try to limit your exposure. Please don't go to parties with individuals. Everybody's got to go to their grocery store and make sure that you're doing so responsibly. Everybody's got to go get gas, make sure that you're doing so responsibly. But really just kind of keep not only your family in mind, but make sure to keep the other kids in this program in mind too, anytime you go outside the home. As far as what to bring to lessons, the 4 things that we want to make sure every kid has for lessons is we want them to have a mask. And I'll go over more about when masks are and are not being worn by our participants. A racket, hopefully every kid, well, we will guarantee that every kid has access to a racket this summer. Whether they bring their own, or we will loan a racket to a kid. Once we loan it to them, it will be theirs for the entire summer. It'll just be an honor system. We hope you bring it back, but if you get really excited about it, chances are, if you're playing tennis, we'll be really excited to share it with you. Make sure that you have closed-toed shoes. This is just a condition for every summer. If you have troubles accessing closed-toed shoes, please just let us know. We will do whatever we can to help provide you with a pair. And then a water bottle. That's just a hydration safety issue. Make sure that you're staying hydrated. Sometimes lessons get really hot. So as far as our daily safety procedures, I just want to, have families commit to reviewing these with your kids, the first couple of days, just because it's going to be unnatural. It's going to be outside of what a normal SPUT summer looks like. So the more we can review this, the safer we can keep everybody in our programs. Daily safety procedures, it's 6 steps, and I will kind of go over them. First, just coach preparation. This happens outside of your awareness. You don't have to worry about this, but this is just something that we want you to know is happening. The coaches, before they come to work every day, they will be doing a self-check. We'll have them check on a couple of symptoms. First is, fever or chills. Have you experienced a dry cough? And do you have any indication of a sore throat, shortness of breath, muscle aches, loss of smell in the past 24 hours? Again, we are aware that there are asymptomatic carriers and things like that. But if somebody is experiencing symptoms and you can take them out of a system, well, that is something that you can do, because obviously you can't catch everyone if there is asymptomatic, but we can catch the people that are experiencing symptoms. We'll also make sure that every coach has the following with them during lessons, which is personal hand sanitizer. Each coach will be equipped with a 2-ounce bottle that will refill as often as they need us to. They will all be asked to have a mask when they're within 10 feet of our players. And then sunscreen, that's just, again, making a quick little plug for sun safety. Just because COVID's happening doesn't mean that the sun, is taking a break. As far as setup, before the kids get there, we're going to have all of the coaches complete an additional symptoms check with their site lead. We're going to have coaches commit to making it 15 minutes ahead of a lesson, just to kind of make sure that we take our time and don't make any mistakes with setup. Some of the things that they'll be setting up is a student arrival area, student walkways, sanitizing and wash stations, student equipment areas, and finally, we'll make sure that they have a lesson prep checklist to make sure that all of these things are done to a high standard. So just for your reference, this is a little bit of what the divisions of the court or the lesson area will look like. So here you can see 3 courts. If you want to imagine, that middle court won't have programming on it, and that's to make sure that there's adequate space for the kids so that they're not accidentally running onto one another courts. We can reduce, shared balls as much as possible, things like that. But in this example, you can see in the back area, we've got a walk zone, a player zone, and a coach zone. The walk zone, sorry, I just moved ahead a little bit too fast. The walk zone, masks are required 100% of the time in that area. In the player zone, we have put together a really, really robust set of expectations for our coaches for structuring drills. We will not require players to wear masks during drills, but the way we have drills set up is that all games should be able to take place with 10 feet of separation between players. We feel fairly confident that that should reduce as much as possible the risk of transmission. But if you do have further concerns, again, if your player or someone in your household has, some like asthma or diabetes or anything like that, where you might be worried a little bit more than other families, just let us know. Some of the things that we can hopefully arrange are maybe a mask always court, to kind of keep your child protected. And then finally, there's going to be a coach zone. Generally, the expectation we'll communicate to the players is that you only enter the coach zone with the coach permission. And again, only one player at a time will be on the coach zone, and that's really going to be for ball pickup. And I'll get a little bit more into that in the later slides. One of the practices we're going to have daily is when the players arrive, they will have an assigned cone to them. All of these cones will be spaced out 10 feet apart. So when they arrive, they get dropped off by their parent. They'll go find their cone. They'll put their stuff down there, and they'll wait for the coaches to kind of walk them through the arrival process. This will just help ensure that all the kids don't go over to the bench, drop their bags together, and then we have all of a sudden, 10 kids within 10 feet of each other. So as far as student arrival goes, we're going to have coaches monitoring arrival. Students will have assigned spots to wait for, like I showed in the previous slide. Coaches will complete a symptoms check with students. It's going to be really, really easy. I'll show it on the next slide. We'll also ask them to review and recite a safety pledge, and then we'll have hand washing stations. Hopefully our equipment gets here ASAP. It should be here before lessons start, but in the event that it isn't, we will, at a bare minimum, have hand sanitizer available that we will require all of the students to use before they enter the court. So symptom check, it's just going to be a really easy 3-question symptom check. Shouldn't be too intimidating for the kids. The goal of it is not to catch any of the kids or to send them home necessarily, but it's really just to help them grow their awareness of monitoring their symptoms. So hopefully that they can catch it, on their own and, maintain safety when they're at home. So basically it's going to be a coach is going to ask, hey, Timmy, how's your tummy? How's your head? How's your smile? 3 really easy questions that will kind of help not only the kid monitor their own safety, but, putting a smile on your face before going to lessons is always a really fun way to kind of build some kind of connection to the program and hopefully help brighten up your child's day. The daily safety pledge, it's a combination of our SPUT spirit values. We thought it would be a really great opportunity not only to reinforce our SPUT spirit values, but to keep our kids committed to practices that will keep themselves and our community safe during the COVID pandemic. So the safety pledge goes like this. As a leader in St. Paul urban tennis, I will seek to serve others by setting a good example. I will persevere and do what is right, not what is easy. I promise to practice integrity and not take shortcuts. I will be responsible to keep myself and others safe. I will stay 10 feet away from other players at all times. Wash and sanitize my hands before, during, and after lessons. Never touch my face until I've washed my hands. Listen to coaches so that they can keep me safe. In this crazy time, I will imagine a better world, and I will use teamwork and do my part to get us there. So hopefully it's just a quick little invitation for kids to persevere in this moment and really have hope for the world we can create on the other side of it. As far as the arrival process, we'll make sure to have cones marking each station. Kids will kind of move through each cone one at a time. You can see that there's a symptoms check station. That's where we ask the 3 questions. A hand wash station. A coach will be there to dispense water from a jug. One quick, spray just to get their hands wet. The coach will dispense a pump of liquid. Obviously, the coach will be wearing a mask this entire time and have gloves or washed hands as they do so, but there shouldn't be any hand-to-hand contact at this point. Once the kid is scrubbed for 20 seconds, they'll hold their hands under the water jug again. The coach will dispense water for a little bit, allow them to rinse off their hands. And then we'll dry them. We'll have paper towels available. And then once they go to that, they will be permitted onto court and go find their cone to wait for coach instructions. During the lessons, coaches are going to be the only ones to touch shared equipment. The only exception is balls. Students will take water breaks at their designated areas, and drills are structured to encourage spacing. Again, the way we structure drills and we're training our coaches, kids should really never be within 10 feet of one another while on court. So for reference, this is what it looks like a little bit, where we'll have a site lead for every site. This is one of our coordinators or very experienced coaches who's had a lot of training and management experience. They're going to be kind of roaming and looking around for safety, while a coach on each court will be responsible for kind of feeding and leading the drill. Some examples of the rotations that coaches have been kind of trained to facilitate. One is just a simple box rotation. So if you can see player 1 down there, They might start on the deuce side of the court, come across the court, hit a forehand, then hit a backhand, then go to the next cone, and then keep rotating in a box. Coaches will have fun little activities sometimes. Maybe you do a jumping jack at one cone, you do a push-up at another, things like that. But it should keep the kids moving and make spacing very easy to maintain. Another way of doing this is doing 2 circles rotations. So having the each pair of players rotate out from the court as they hit balls. And then kind of the one that a lot of people are probably curious about is how we will do ball pickup. So again, one of the things that we feel more comfortable with as we've grown in our understanding of COVID is that the surface-to-surface transmission is rare, but it is important to be cognizant and responsible when engaging with shared surfaces. So tennis balls are not great transmitters, but what we will commit to is before students do any kind of ball pickup, what they will do is if we do like a huge set of balls where we want each kid to pick up 10 or more balls, we'll have them hand sanitize, get a squirt of hand sanitizer before and after they pick up balls. And we'll do something like this where only one kid is on the ball side of the court at a time, while the other kids are doing some kind of agility, balance, and coordination activities at their cones. We'll probably say, all right, everybody, you're going to pick up 10 balls, put them in the bucket, and then switch, okay? We can make it a fun little activity for them. Again, our main priority is to maintain spacing as much as possible. Ball pickup option 2, is if we want kids to kind of pick up balls throughout the duration of the drill, they might do something like this where you can see player 3 is hitting 2 balls. Player 2 is kind of rotating through the backside. They just got done hitting their 2 balls. They pick up 2 balls, put them in the bucket, and rotate around for their next turn to hit. Some additional notes. Again, I said hand sanitizer. We're going to use it as much as possible. We are going to just excessively model, demonstrate, and rehearse. Best way to make sure that the kids are following safety procedures is to model it ourselves. We're going to communicate really heavily as much as possible. We are going to keep you in the loop. If ever you feel like our communication is dropping, just please let us know so we can fix it. We're going to do our best to stay up to date with the most recent COVID information, health information. And the last thing is, I think this is kind of just for everybody, is to be flexible and be understanding. We're doing the best we can in this situation. We're not doing anything lightly or irresponsibly. And so with that in mind, there might be situations that we don't feel comfortable, that we accidentally didn't plan for, in which case we really need our families to be flexible so that we can adapt as best we know how. And then the last part, student dismissal. If we have a lesson review, they will review from their designated spots 10 feet apart, and we will dismiss one at a time so that we avoid opportunities for congregating. So your review might look something like this. And your dismissal might look something like this. We might put in some fun activities at each cone just to kind of give the kids a reason to stop and pause. But yeah, and then after the lesson, all of our coaches will make sure to sanitize any shared equipment, check the hand washing stations, before the next group comes in, and check our closing checklist at the end of the day. So that worst case scenario, just to let you know a little bit of where our thoughts are on this. Worst case scenario is, a student, a coach or a participant contracts COVID. In the event that happens, what we will do is we will remove that person from programming for a minimum of 14 days. Again, remove feels really aggressive. What we will do is talk to the people and say, hey, we're going to ask that you separate yourself from programming. Just to make sure that financial or anything like that is not a barrier to them doing so. We will offer a refund. We will immediately inform all families of that site. We will not compromise any safety or confidentiality. We won't share the name of anybody in doing so. It will be very vague. It will just be, for instance, if it happens at Central High School, we will just inform all of the families. Just so you know, a player at Central High School contracted COVID, they let us know, here's the steps that we took to keep you all safe. We will review our safety practices and make sure that we weren't doing anything irresponsibly that potentially allowed that transmission to happen on our terms. And then we will assess the continuation of programs at that site. Now, I said this was the worst case scenario. The real worst case scenario is, we realize that the infections are happening as a result of our programming. So potentially 2 or more infections happen within a week within our programs. At that point, we would immediately cancel all programming at that site for the remainder of the session. We'll process refunds as needed. We'll audit our safety practices, and if it got by and it was because of something that we did irresponsibly, we will assess our continued programming for the remainder of summer 2020. So that's it. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you found the information you needed through this presentation. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at admin@urbantennis.org or give us a call at 651-222-2879. I wish you all the best, and I hope you stay safe through all of this. Remember that our community is pretty darn strong, and we have a lot going for us. So be there for each other, and we're gonna get through this. All right, now I just got to figure out how to close this presentation. Stay well, everybody.